Hello viewers, Namaste, Sasikal, Adab. This is Assistant Professor Gursimran Singh from PD Department of Computer Science and IT, Doabo College, Jalandhar. Today's topic of discussion is proxy server. We have divided this topic into two sessions. In first session, means in today's session, we will be discussing introduction to the proxy server, the working of the proxy server, and the features of the proxy server. In coming session 2, we will be discussing the modes of the proxy server and the types of the proxy server. So let's start today's session. Now in simple English, proxy means acting on someone other's behalf. जैसे आपने क्लास में भी ये वर्ड सुना ही होगा proxy. तो it means कोई स्टूडेंट सपोज कीजिए क्लास में फिजिकली प्रेजेंट नहीं है तो उसकी अटेंडेंस किसी और स्टूडेंट ने बोल दी तो हम उसको बोलते हैं कि प्रॉक्सी लगा दी. तो इट मीन्स उस टाइम पे एक स्टूडेंट बिहेव करता है ऑन समवन अदर्स बिहाफ या एक स्टूडेंट एक्ट करता है ऑन समवन अदर स्टूडेंट्स बिहाफ. तो इसको हम बोलते हैं प्रॉक्सी. द कॉन्सेप्ट ऑफ द प्रॉक्सी इज सेम इन द वर्ल्ड ऑफ कंप्यूटर नेटवर्किंग. Proxy is a machine that act as a client to the server and act as a server to the client. So basically, the proxy divides the direct communication of the client server into two parts. Now to client, it says, I am the proxy, I am the server, and to server, it says, I am the client. Now, according to the definition, a proxy server is a machine which acts as an intermediary between the computers of a local area network and the internet. We can understand the working of the proxy server through a very simple diagram. Now, on the screen, you can observe that we have three main components: the local area network, the proxy, and the internet. So the proxy is in between the local area network and the internet. So the proxy server has divided the direct communication between the local area network and internet into two parts. The proxy will act as a server to the local area network and act as a client to the internet. So it means to the local area computer networks, this machine, the proxy server machine, will say I am the client, and to the internet, this proxy server will say I am the client. But the point is, this machine is neither a client nor a server. It just acts on the behalf of the client, and it also work on the behalf of the server available on the internet. So I hope you got the concept of the proxy server. Now let's discuss the features of the proxy server. Now there are four main features of the proxy server: the caching, filtering, authentication, and reverse access. Now we will be discussing these features one by one. The first feature of the proxy server is caching. We can understand the concept of the caching through a very simple diagram. Now let's suppose that we have a local area network on the left hand side of the proxy server, and we have the internet on the right hand side of the proxy server. Now, if any computer from the local area network wants to access the internet, so this computer cannot, the computer from the local area network cannot access the internet directly. It can access the internet through this proxy server only. So it means these local computers will be configured with the settings of the proxy server. Now, suppose let's mark this machine as number one, and let's mark this machine as a number two. Now, suppose machine number one wants to access a web server available on the internet. Let's say it's a Google server. So, because there is no direct communication between the computers of the local area network and the internet, the request to the web server from the machine number 1 will be sent to the proxy server. Now, obviously, proxy server it doesn't have the services of the google.com. So, but now to this computer, it is saying like I am the server, but it is not actually. So, what the proxy server will do, it will accept the request from the machine number 1, and on the behalf of the client, it will go to the web server and store the web page into its local memory. Then it will pass the reply to the machine that requested for the services. Now, because the fetched data is stored in the local memory of the proxy server, when next time any other machine from the local area network will request for the same service, what the proxy will do, it will return the page from its local memory. So this concept is called caching. So whatever the client requests to the internet, the reply is stored in the local memory of the proxy server. So it stored the data temporarily in its local memory. So next time when some other machine will request for the same data, the proxy server will not go to the internet. Because the data is available in its local memory, it will respond the data to the client that has requested the information. So now let's discuss the second feature, that is filtering. Now, because the proxy server lies in between the client and the internet, so it can filter the outgoing packets and it can also filter the incoming packets. I mean, filtering means checking the packets for viruses or any other malicious content. Now, for this purpose, obviously, we have the firewalls. Now, firewalls are basically of three types: static, stateful, and proxy. Static firewall can filter the traffic, incoming and outgoing traffic based upon the IP address only. But the stateful firewall can filter the traffic based upon the IP address and the port number. But the static and the stateful firewalls, they cannot filter the data part of the packet. The proxy is the most advanced kind of firewall. It can filter the incoming and outgoing packets up to layer number 7. We can understand this concept through a very simple diagram. Now suppose that this machine, let's suppose that this in local area network has the network ID of let's say 192.168.1.0, and this machine has the IP address of 2, and this machine has the IP address of 3. Now let's assume that this machine wants to access a web service available on the internet having the address of let's say 117.116.115.114. Now, what the proxy firewall will do, it will accept the packet from the machine number 2. It will check the source IP address, the destination IP address, and it will also check the data part of the packet that has been sent by the machine number 2. Now, after getting the response from the destination, the machine will match the address of the sending machine and will verify whether the request has been the reply has been received from the same machine to whom the request was sent. And it will also make sure that the reply is to be forwarded to the machine that has requested the information, that is 192.168.1.2. It will also check the port numbers of the source machine and the destination machine, and it will also check the data part of the packet, whether it is clean or it contain any kind of malicious content. So your proxy can filter the incoming and the outgoing traffic based upon the IP address, port number, and it can also scan the data part of the packet. The next feature of the proxy server is authentication. Authentication means it can check for username and the password based access to the internet. Obviously, in your local area network, uh, there uh, there might exist multiple machines who and they also want to access the internet. So in this case, you can provide the internet access. Yeah, you can restrict the internet access to specific users only. For that purpose, obviously, you will be providing the username and password based authentication to the user. Only the users with username and password will be able to access the internet. If any user don't have username and password, he will not be able to access the internet. Now we can understand this concept through a very simple diagram. Now suppose that in local area network we have two computers and two users. Let's number them as user number 1 and user number 2. Now, both the users want to access the internet because the internet access is through the proxy server. So first of all, the request from the machine will be sent to the proxy server. Now, the proxy server will challenge the user to enter the username and the password. And the user that has the username and password will be able to access the internet. The user that do not have the username and the password, he will not be able to access the internet. Now let's assume that in this case user number 1 has the username and the password. So if this user will try to access the internet, obviously it will type some web address. For example, let's say the user number 1 want to access the google.com. So the user number 1 will open the browser and will try to access the google.com. The request will be forwarded to the proxy server. Now the proxy server will challenge the user and will ask the user to enter the username and the password to access the internet. Now because the user number 1 has the username and the password, he will enter the username and password and he will be able to access the internet. But user number 2 doesn't have username and the password. So when the user number 2 will be try to access the google.com, it will simply open its browser and type google.com in address bar to access the services. The request will be forwarded to the proxy server and it will challenge the user to enter the username and the password. Because the user number 2 doesn't have any username and the password, he will not be able to access the internet. This is the another feature, very important feature of the proxy server. You can control the access from local area network to the internet. Now let's discuss the fourth and the final feature of the proxy server, that is reverse access. Reverse access means if any user from the internet wants to access the machine that is in your local area network, the proxy gives you this option also. We can understand this concept through a very simple diagram. Now let's assume that a user from the internet, let's mark it as U1, he wants to access a machine that is there in your local area network, and let's mark this machine as number 1. Now, if this user wants to access this internal network machine, the proxy can enable the reverse access. By using this feature, any user from the external network can access the machine that is in your internal network. So that's it with today's session. In next session, we will be discussing the modes of the proxy server and the types of the proxy server. So stay in touch, keep watching, see you in the next session. Thank you very much.